Okay, so I've done an E-wrap around all of the needles that I've got in the forward position there. So I've done all 50 needles now. Okay, so if you have a Brother machine, you'll know what this is. This is a cast-on comb, okay, and it's got teeth a bit sharp on one side and facing away from you, obviously on the other side. Okay, so I've got the hooks facing away from me, okay, and if you've got a silver reed or a Knitmaster machine, you won't have one of these, although you can use them. If you can get your hands on one, you can use them on both types of machine. They're not just peculiar to Brother. As long as they're the same gauge, okay, as these combs, then you should be fine. Okay, so I'm using a standard comb, but we do have the same comb size for chunky machines as well. So this is for standard and chunky. Okay, so you could use one of these if you want to. Okay, if you don't have one of these, you will be putting your weaving brushes down. Okay, so on a Brother, they're little buttons in front of me here. If you've got a silver reed, there'll be some little levers at the side here, and you just push them down and they clip down, and automatically those brushes will be in the weaving working position. Okay. So I'm going to use the comb to cast on for this demo. Okay, so I'm going to pull that yarn forward that's right around the last needle, and then I'm going to hook with the hooks facing away from me. I'm going to hook each of the loops that's going between the needles onto the loops. Okay, and it should hang down and move slightly from side to side. Okay, it shouldn't be dead against the machine. It should have a little bit of leeway there. Okay, so that's what you're looking for. And if you've done a looser E-wrap cast on, that should be fine. Okay, so you'll find that your little comb should hang down and move slightly from side to side and backwards and forwards. Okay. If you want to, you can hang on your weights here, depends on what kind of yarn. This is good practice, I guess. So I'm going to put my little weights on, which just hang on to the cast on comb. Okay, and now I'm going to take any slack that I pulled through originally, and I'm going to pull it back through and wrap it back around the comb. Like so. Okay, so it can't get caught on anything. Anything else that you don't need around, just move out of the way. Okay, so if you're on a Brother, just make sure you're in the N position on the NH lever, the hold or the normal lever. Okay, if you're on a Knitmaster or silver reed, make sure your Russell levers, which are located just in front of the carriage here, just make sure they're back against the machine. Okay, so again, just refer to manual if you have a different machine. Okay. So I'm ready to take my carriage across now. Okay, and there's my first row. Everything looks okay, everything's picked up okay, so I'm just going to carry on knitting. I'm just going to slacken off a little bit here on the top tension. So it's just dragging a little bit there. Okay, yeah, that feels a lot better to me. Okay. Fine. Okay, so what I'm going to start to do now is look at some shaping that we can do on the machine. Okay, so you should have some transfer tools that look a little bit like this, whether you have a Brother or a Knitmaster. They're very, very similar. Some might be different colours. Some are blue and orange and white, I believe, if you've got a slightly older Knitmaster. But they basically do the same thing. Okay, so if you grab your one-prong transfer tool for a start, and we're going to start doing some decreasing. Okay, so I'm going to remove a stitch from the edge and I'm going to place it to the adjacent needle next door to it. Okay, and this is the simplest form of decreasing that you can do. Okay, so when do you want to have a little go at the decreasing? Just knit however much you want and then just stop your carriage For this, you can have it on either side. It doesn't really matter. I've got it on the right-hand side, but I say it doesn't really matter at this point. Okay, so I'm going to use my transfer tool and pull it forward all the way. Okay, so my transfer tool is on the first needle there. I've pulled the stitch back past that latch. Okay, there's my latch there, and the stitch is here. Okay, when we've done that, we're going to go all the way back and keep everything in a nice straight line. Okay, so keep the tool and the knitting needle, take it back. The latch of the needle should fall forward, and keep going, keep going, keep going, and eventually, there it goes. This stitch is on my transfer tool. Okay, so we've got an empty needle on the far left hand side there, and I've got my stitch on the transfer tool. And I'm just going to locate that transfer tool on the hook of the, oh, nearly lost it there, on the hook of the adjacent needle. Okay, and pull it forward a little bit, but not a long way, just a little bit forward, and I'm tilting my tool upwards until, don't let it come off the hook of the needle, okay, until that stitch has got itself on that adjacent needle. Okay, so that needle there now has 2 stitches on it. Okay, so have a little tidy up, just take that back. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 rows, and then I'm going to do that again. Okay, and then I'm going to do that again. So I'm going to get my transfer tool, locate it onto that first needle on the left there, pull it forward, keep coming, keep coming, keep coming, there. Okay, so now that latch has gone back and the stitch has gone back to more of the stem of the needle. Okay, so keep everything in a nice straight line, same as what the same trajectory as the needle. Keep everything in a nice straight line, and then push that needle back. The latch closes. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep pushing back. That's it. And then the stitch is now onto the transfer tool. When you've done that, okay, make sure it doesn't slip off the end of the tool. Keep it towards the plastic of the tool. Okay, and now locate the eyelet of the tool onto the adjacent needle. When you're happy with that, pull it slightly forward, and now I'm tilting the tool upwards, and don't let it go until you're happy that that stitch, there it's gone now, is on, oops, the needle. Okay, so now that one has the 2 stitches on it. Have a little tidy up there, just push that needle butt back a little bit, and I'm going to do 2 more pieces. Okay, so that's the simplest way of decreasing. So now, when you've had a little practice with that, have a little practice with the 2-prong transfer tool. Okay, and this time we've got to locate 2 transfer prongs there onto the 2 needles on the left-hand side. And pull them forward, keep coming, pass so that that latch has gone back, the stitch has been it's been sent back to the stem of the needle. Again, keep everything in that straight line. This is a little bit more fiddlier because you've got 2 stitches to deal with. Okay, so when you're happy that the stitches are on the needles, on the transfer tool, you can now, and now this time you have to bring in the needle that is empty. Okay, so I'm bringing that empty needle forward this time, and now I'm moving the 2 stitches, but only 1 space to the right. Okay, so one of the stitches on the transfer tool is going to go onto the adjacent needle, and the other one on the left hand side here, that's going to go on back onto that empty needle. So I've moved 2 stitches, but I've only gone across 1 space. Okay, oops, gone too far there. Okay, so we do exactly the same. Make sure that both stitches now are on the hooks of the needles. When you're happy, then take your transfer tool away, and don't do that until you're completely happy with that. Okay, so this one has 2 stitches on it here, and then this needle just has the 1 stitch on it there. Okay, do a couple of rows. Okay, now this time what I'm going to do is do exactly the same, but move over 2 stitches at a time. So I haven't just moved over once, I've moved over 2 stitches. Okay, so this stitch here is now going to go onto that edge needle there, and I'm just going to pull them forward a little bit. Now, fingers are good transfer tools as well, so if it's not doing what you want it to do, you can go in there and just give it a little helping hand if you need to. If you've got fingernails, even better. And there, the 2 stitches that I've moved are now on these 2 needles here. So this time I've moved over 2 spaces, not 1, with the 2 stitches there. Okay, have a little tidy up there, just pop those back. And do a couple more rows. Now this might feel a bit bumpy as you're taking your carriage over, okay, and sometimes it doesn't knit off neatly when you start to do a little bit more in-depth transferring. If it doesn't, just reform that stitch before you come back over again, otherwise it'll be a little bit untidy. Okay, so that's using the 2-prong with moving 1 space over to the right, and then the second time I moved 2 spaces over to the right. Okay, and the next one to try, when you're happy with that, have a go at the 3-prong transfer tool. Okay, and I'm going to do the same. Obviously we've got 3 this time, so I've got to keep my eye on 3 stitches. Okay, so pull forward exactly the same as before, push back in the same level, same line. Oh, a bit tougher this one. Okay, when you're happy that all 3 are there, come across. Now you can either move 1 space over, so I'm moving 3 stitches but only 1 space, or you can move 3 stitches and move 2 spaces over. Okay, the beauty or the reason why we do this is if you've looked at raglans and sleeves on fashion knitwear, you'll see that there's what we call fashioning marks, which are like little bumps in the knitting. If you run your fingers over the armhole, you'll feel little bumps where what we call the fashioning marks are. Okay, and that's what we're making here. We're making those little bumps. So it's kind of a bit of a decorative, but also a functional reason why we're doing that as well. If we need to get rid of more needles in quite a short amount of space of knitting, we can move 2 stitches over at a time. Okay, you'll get different results and different angles depending on how many needles you're moving over to the left or right. Okay, so if you're only moving 1 needle over, you're going to get a slightly different angle to if you're moving 2 needles over at any one time. Okay, so now this gets a little bit tricky because I've got 3 stitches now which need to be located on the hooks of those needles. So I've got each of my transfer tool, the prongs of the transfer tool, the eyelets of the tool, on all 3 of those needles there. My stitches are just there, ready to go. I'm going to pull those 3 needles forward a little bit, and I'm going to tilt the tool, and hopefully they should slip on. Again, if you've got fingernails, help it along if you need to. Okay, and there, all 3 have been moved over. Okay, so I've moved 3 stitches over, 2 spaces to the right. Okay, and that'll give you a bigger bump. Okay, so where the bump is on the fashioning, that'll give you a slightly raised up effect, slightly more pronounced mark. Okay, I've just done a couple of rows there. Okay, you can also have a little practice at doing transferring on the other side as well. Okay, so you can do exactly the same thing on the other side of the knitting. You've just got this yarn in the way, so you just have to be careful that that edge stitch there has actually gone onto that edge needle there, because the tension of the yarn, the tension wire up here, is pulling it away from you. So just be careful that that end stitch has actually gone onto that edge needle. Okay, I'm having a little tidy up there. Okay, so just push those needle bits back. Get rid, oh yes, very important. So the 2 that I've got rid of, make sure they are back against the non-working position of the needle bit, so that's as far back as they can go. So I'm pushing them as far back as I can go there. Okay, so I'm just going to knit over there. Okay, again, it might feel a bit bumpy because I'm moving, I'm asking the machine to knit over 2 stitches instead of 1 stitch when I'm doing the fashioning. So just be aware that it might be a bit bumpy for that first course that you do over those stitches. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to show you is this little gadget. And some of you may have seen one. I'm not sure if we have them at the uni, but they're a really handy gadget. I got them with an old knitting machine. I've got a couple of them actually, and they're adjustable. They're 7 prongs all in a row there, and you've got a little nut on the side there. You can undo the nut and pull out as many of the prongs as you want. So I've got 5 there. If I wanted to move 5 stitches all in one go, or I could have 6 or 7 or however many you want to move. Okay, you can also use it for a quick way of making eyelets if you're doing like a little mesh fabric. Okay, so what I've done is every other needle. Okay, so I probably wouldn't use that for decreasing, but just whilst I've got the gadget in my hand, I thought I'd just show you what you can do with it as well. So you can have any kind of combination. So, if you can have an uneven combination, or that if you want to, or have them all forward, or whatever. Okay, so I'm going to have a go at doing all 7. So I'm going to transfer 7 stitches across. Okay, but I'm only going to move them a maximum of 2 spaces. Okay, so I'm using the transfer tool in exactly the same way as you would with a 1, 2 or 3 prong transfer tool. If you do see these for sale, they probably will be second hand, but I would snap them up. They shouldn't be too expensive. I think I got this probably for about £10–12 or something. And they're really handy for doing really nice fashioning marks. So if you want nice classic fashioning details in your knits, these are really good because they actually stand out more away from the edge of the garment edges, the seams. Okay, so if you want to make a feature of your fashioning, getting one of these tools is quite good. Anyway, so I've got my 7 needles forward, and again I'm going to push all 7 back again. So I'm just using exactly the same way as we've done with the other tools. Okay, but we've got 7. Okay, so I've got to keep my eye on all 7 stitches. Okay, so I've pushed it back and now got all of those stitches on my transfer tool, and I'm going to move, as I say, maximum of 2 needles over to the right. And now this time you have to make sure, and this is a little bit tricky, and I'm tilting the tool, and it will take some practice to get all of your 7 needles located in the 7 prong transfer tool. Okay, so I've moved over 2 needles. So I've got these 2 stitches on the right hand side. They're going to go onto the needles that are already on the machine there. And again, I'm using my fingers as little transfer tools as well. I've got fingernails, even better. Okay, so I'm just wiggling those forward a little bit, and I'm tilting that tool up again. And don't let that tool go until every single stitch has got somewhere to go to, and then remove your tool. Okay, have a little tidy up there. Okay, get rid of those 2 needles that are now out of the way. So that's back against the needle bed there, and do a couple of rows. Incidentally, I'm just doing 2 rows in between just to clear the knitting off before I start doing any more decreasing. But in reality, you could do 4 rows, 6 rows. You could do uneven rows. I would try and keep your rows even if possible. But it's, you can do odd rows if you want to, but I'd keep it to 2, 6, 4, 8 rows in between your fashionings.